morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we got another video coming up for you guys. It's live. It's been here for a minute now. The event dungeon is up and running, and I know there's a lot of people who have been having somewhat issues, and they may have some options for some teams and some options for others, and they don't have the full picture. I kind of wanted to introduce something that, depending on how you look at it, might be a little, family friendly in the sense of like free-to-play friendly. So we are going to be dealing with Stage 30, and the run that I'm going to be showcasing is going to be using champions that are epics as well as champions that are easy or free to play acquire. So in particular with this run, we are going to be using the following. It's going to be Sulfurion, Cphi, UROST, who is our Doom Tower Hard acquiescible champion, Ghostborne, and then of course Seir. I'm going to explain why in just a moment here, but pretty much one of the big things you got to watch about this fight in particular is getting the boss down and killing him, in addition to surviving the onslaught of volcanoes. So those two big key things are kind of important to keep in mind when it comes to dealing with this particular fight. And that's why we have champions like Sulfurion. So Sulfurion is designed to basically manage the burn intake that you would take from volcanoes. If you're doing a bunch of buffs, if you're doing a bunch of turn meter, his passive is very, very strong, especially since it's an entirely demon spawn associated team. Then, not only is it irresistible or blockable, it's just going to start cooking your team, But instead of it being a bad thing for us, we turn it into a positive thing with Sulfurion. Now, this champion can be interchangeable with some other alternative options, such as Astronaut that I can think of right off the rip. But those two champions are pretty much what we're using to manage the volcanoes. Now, as for everything else, if we kill the whole wave, which is what Seir is going to be intended to do, besides the boss, then the Kurosa is going to flip and she's going to just wreak havoc. How do we manage that? Well, that's where Uros is going to come in, and I'm going to show you his build after we show you a quick run. And pretty much everybody else that's in here, the Cphi and the Ghostborne, are just pretty much primarily there to set up the Seir so that she can wipe all the ads and let Kurosa turn into the force she is. And then from there, this team is going to be designed to let the one standing champion, which is going to be Uros, basically abuse the fact that Kurosa is going aggressive in terms of attacking. And we kind of found something that's going to give us a little bit of like survivability and sustain along the way. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the run. I want to say this is about, on average, 145-ish to 220 in terms of speed. So it's not the fastest team that's out there. I'll do another video on that one shortly. But the main thing is that you can use more free-to-play friendly champions, maybe with the exception of Sulfurion, and I'll give you some examples that may be able to help you exclude him from the pool too as well. But with that being said, let's show the run. Let's see how it goes. So how it's going to start is we have Sulfurion and Cphi in a faster build. They're going to be enabling the team. They're going to be boosting up, giving as many buffs as possible. With Ghostborne, he does the decreased defense, which is irresistible. And of course, Seir pops using all the buffs in play and killing them. Then you see Kurosa here basically flip really, really fast and just go absolute bonkers, and she kills pretty much my entire team. And that's where I'm going to disappear here for a second. Our Uros really stands supreme. His build is designed to keep himself alive, and we utilize his passive, which gives a bunch of poisons out to anybody that attacks him. I think it's like a small percentage. I think it's like 30, 40, or 50, depending on how much you have it booked, along with his build to keep him going. So the poisons are going to do the job. And then Uros's build is gonna basically do a lot of the sustain in that regard. So we got our offense measure with the poisons, and we have our defensive measure with sustain in the build. So I'll show you that here in just a moment. Right now, we're already 51 seconds in. Poisons are slowly coming in. Even the Word of the Fallen, which is the blessing that Kurosa also has a chance to proc. I don't know if you noticed it, but we got another poison there as a byproduct of that. So everything she does, every proc she initiates, has a chance to do it outside of the A3, which is just her buffing. But anything that hits him is giving us an opportunity to just let it go. Doesn't matter if we have a lot of accuracy or a lot of resistance, or if we get weakened debuffs or whatever. As long as we're able to sustain ourselves over a certain threshold, which I don't know if you've been paying attention, has been giving us the opportunity to just constantly stay alive. So pair that with the build that also brings that mitigation, we pretty much have what we're looking for. So I'm very excited to show you guys. It does take a little bit because obviously we need to let the poison's chance proc. It's not 100% guaranteed. And I'm actually going to show you even more of a free-to-play style approach for this because, believe it or not, my Uros is not booked in this particular video. And I want to take a special moment here while we're letting the poisons do their job to give a special shout out to one of the community members in my community, Amatsu. He's letting me showcase this video because I did build this team up for him. In terms of the concept or the builds and the summary board. So looks like we're kind of making it along. It's getting close to the 2-minute mark now, and we're down to the last 10 to 15, 20-ish% of this fight. So as we get a little bit more hits from Kurosa, we'll get hopefully a couple more poisons, maybe a brimstone proc or something along the way, and we just need to let that go. And so it looks like we got a little bit unlucky with our poison distribution, but now it's starting to crank up a little bit. But yeah, it can vary. It can vary. Obviously, at the end of the day, you're beholden to RNG a little bit. I do want to give you guys some examples of some things to watch out for too in terms of stats. So we're going to break that down here in a little bit. As a matter of fact, let me make sure I have it up there and available. I think I do. But just in case, let's make sure we have it. The most important thing though is that he needs to live, and we need the ads to go down pretty quickly. So I'm going to give you some things to look out for. But let's show the build. So for Cphi and Sulfurion, it's not really important to have them in any particular sets or any type of things outside of just making sure they hit two things in particular, which is speed for one. And then for Sulfurion, if you want to get a little bit more extra value out of burns, and obviously he'll need a little bit of accuracy on top of that. So I think those are the only two things you really have to worry about them. And I'm going to go and flip over here before we show everything. Shout out to Hell Hades and his stages tool. It gives you a little bit of information about what to look for in terms of stats. Pretty much, for the most part, across the board for most of the team, you just need to be above 265, 300 at a minimum. So for Sulfurion and for Cphi, them being on the faster side of things is what's going to help push the rest of your team into play. And then from there, Cphi, as long as she's got a decent amount of speed, and of course, with our Ghostborne also being at a speed that's above her, you have the set of series kind of collide, because Cphi will turn meter boost, which will also give buffs, which triggers Volcanos, which triggers Sulfurion. Sulfurion gets his turn, he also puts burns out and activates him, which triggers his passive. It's a lot of turn meter, as you can kind of see. So like, you got a little bit of like flexibility, a lot of room for Ghostborne and Seir for the most part. Now, keep in mind though, you do want to be fast enough to kind of avoid being cut in on, because that just messes it all up. And that's kind of where our builds are going to go in from here. So let's go ahead and show our recently ones here. Like I said, a bunch of speed on both of the Cphi and the Sulfurion. I'm not going to really gravitate towards them. We're going to show our powerhouse there, which is going to be Uros. Now, here's a couple things you got to keep in mind. We are running 3x Defiant. I believe there is a little bit of flexibility in terms of how many. You want at least probably 1 or 2 at a minimum. And you're probably gonna have to elevate your defensive and HP stats a bit more to make that work. I obviously haven't tested, so I'm not gonna hard exclaim that. Another alternative measure could be Stalwart, because I do know that Defiant is a Forge Pass based set. If you do the combination of options, one of Defiant is half of what Stalwart is in terms of AOE damage mitigation. But the difference maker when it comes to Defiant and Stalwart in comparison is going to be the fact that not only does it give you defense percent, so that's an easier stat to build into, but you can build 2 of them as well, which gives you even more of that advantage stat. So obviously Defiant times 3 would be the most important thing that you're going to want to acquire to make sure that he sustains through it. He doesn't have to be overly fast, believe it or not. We actually have him at around 180 is what I aim for. The goal, I would say, if you're looking for a decent build, if maybe you have good Defiant and you're able to build up into it, you want to get kind of closer to like that 100,000, maybe 110 to kind of play it safe for HP. I think 100,000 should be roughly about enough. The defense side, though, you want to be closer to like 4K, maybe 4.1. My build in particular for this account was a little bit more HP leaning, but even then I still had to pick it up. I was actually short like maybe 200 when I first attempted this team, and it did fail. And I was like, you know what? I just need to beef up the defense a little bit more. So I found this little sweet spot with a little bit more HP in favor of defense. But I would recommend, if you're looking for a solid option, 4100 4K defense is pretty much a good soft spot. 100k to 110 plus is what you're looking for the HP side. The speed, I think 180 is just fine. Believe it or not, he really doesn't need to get too many turns, and I would argue that it's better that he's not going as fast, because you want Kurosa to do her turns. That's what's going to generate the poisons, right? And then on the flip side of this is a little bit on the lower end, and this is kind of where I would say there's a little room for feedback on this build, but it does do the job. Kurosa's resistance is 500, which means that if you want to have a 95 or higher success rate when it comes to landing poisons, you want to get closer to like the 525. I do have him a little bit under a lot lower than the radar there, so it could contribute if you paid attention to the last fight there. It might have been a couple of like resistances that may have happened in tandem with not landing the passive proc as well. Remember, it's not a guaranteed 100% chance. So there's times where it's just not going to proc at all, and then if it does proc and we're a little bit under the radar in terms of accuracy, you know, we obviously missed the mark. But that's kind of the bulk of it. Obviously, with not many glyphs, not a lot of dust and oils involved into it, the build still came out pretty solid for the most part. The survivability was there. But that's not all you need to survive. It is mandatory that you also bring Golden Elixir. And in particular, this one is actually really, really good for him because that's what, every single time he goes below 50%, he's healing back up over 50%, which allows him to go below 50% to trigger it again. And that's kind of what's creating that infinite HP loop for Uros. So damage mitigation from Defiant sets, or if you so happen to have Stalwart, that works fine too as well. Along with Golden Elixirs, what's kind of basically allowing him to go down, then up, down, then up, and down, then up, and he always maintains that. I did add onto this. I took this from one of his other champions. I don't know why it was on there, but, you know, shout out to Amatsu for this one. But boss damage, too, as well, to kind of give you a little bit more survival on top of that. Having this particular gemstone was very, very solid. So unflinching. If you could get at least one of those on him, it makes it even better to survive. To mitigate damage. And then, of course, because he has accuracy built into his kit, and we also have the survivability display, we kind of want to help pick up the fight a little bit more. That's where options like Brimstone become very valuable, because you'll apply poisons, and if he doesn't happen to have any debuffs, or his debuffs aren't maxed, it actually does happen from time to time, you can hit the boss and get that Brimstone whenever Uros does get his turn. So then when the boss uses any active abilities that's not his A1, or her A1, you'll actually get the Brimstone to proc, and you'll do a little bit extra damage, which will help speed up the run a little bit. Now, to follow this all off and to kind of put icing on the cake here, I'm going to show the Masteries, and I don't know if you guys noticed, just to put proof in the pudding there, we don't have a full booked, we actually don't have it booked at all, and it still works just fine. But the Masteries here are going to be another key part here. We kind of lean towards things that would provide a little bit of mitigation, so things like improved parry kind of give us a little bit there, so if the champion does try to crit, it decreases that damage there. We also have some extra healing coming from Rejuvenation, which gives us a bit more of a pop on the heal, as well as just basically trying to remove debuffs if we take it. It's just things that are going to keep us alive, in a summary of words. So Retribution's counterattack, his A1 gives him a shield, obviously some value there. A little bit of a throwaway, but you're going to see it. Steadfast, maximum HP, lay on hands, more values that this healer gets, to kind of lean down towards getting more value out of the shield. We're kind of just scooting down the line of just everything that can help sustain him better. So you see Merciful Aid, and then, of course, we ended it off with our Tier 6 of the Elixir of Life. And then, of course, set bonuses. We get a little bit more on top of our set bonus that we're getting, whether that's that defense percent stat, things of that sort. These are all things that kind of help keep him going. Now, I did put Spirit Haste on there. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. Like I said, the whole point of this is just to allow Kurosa to get her turns to constantly proc the poisons. And then, of course, if we get it, we have a better chance of placing it. So that kind of helps out with the fact that we don't have 100% on the Call of the Cage passive. So this is the bread and butter to get there, to get to the finish line. But to start the fight off, to really get the things going, Seir, Wave Clear, and Ghostborne are designed to kind of push them into that place so that Uros can take over. Now, Ghostborne's purpose in this fight is literally just to set up an irresistible decrease defense. He also provides an extra buff, which allows Seir's pop, her Karma Burn, to do even more. If you do the math there in a summary of words, Cphi gives 3 buffs. With the shield that comes from Sulfurion, that kind of goes away pretty quickly because of the burns and all that stuff. And then, of course, the increased attack. So if you do so happen to have that shield up available on some champions there, you're getting roughly about 4 or 5, buffs for her to pop off with, right? And that's pretty much all it is. I mean, you could technically use a shield set. I don't think it's mandatory. This account doesn't have any, unfortunately, so I didn't go there. But just making sure that you can land the decrease defense. It does need to be booked if you're going to use it this way. If you don't, then there's a chance of failure there, which means that you're going to have to go through that wave process and fighting the rest of the team, and that could be kind of a problem there. I don't believe he has any masteries whatsoever. We did put him in 9-piece Feral, which gives the pop a little bit more value when it comes to Seir. I also don't think that's mandatory, but it was a nice little thing that I could achieve on the account, so I said, screw it, why not? And then, of course, Seir. Seir's actually very, very simplistic. I got her in an Ignore percent set. You can do this in Savage, you can do this in Lethal, you can do this in Merciless, you can also do it in Slayer. But the main thing you want to hit is 100% crit rate, as much crit damage as you can do to enable the pop. And then, of course, I put her around like 250-ish speed so that she would be kind of on par with what the rest of the wave is. Remember, they're kind of like hovering around 270s, 260s, and of course, the most fastest one, which is Wither at 300. But with all the turn meter boosting that we're getting from burns being placed on us with Sulfurion, as well as Cphi's boost as well, that's what kind of pushes up there. She also gets increased speed, so obviously she's going to just be faster by the time it goes. But to be careful, if you were to throw in some alternative measures, you want to be watchful for a couple things. Number one, our Cphi in this particular team is she's a PvP based build, right? So obviously polymorph is still somewhat valuable in the meta. It's becoming less prevalent, but it's still kind of something that you can use. Having polymorph could end up causing the Volcanos in the enemy team to get polymorph, and that slows down the fight a little bit. It actually happened just before I started this recording, so thankfully it wasn't too bad. That's something that inevitably, it's not an issue for this team overall. It's just more of it slows it down a little bit, which means, you have to wait longer to get to your next fight, to the next fight, and you kind of want to farm, right? And then on top of that too, if you're not using a champion like Sulfurion or Cphi particularly, you can use alternative champions, but if you're losing out on turn meter bonuses or something along those lines, you need to pick up the speeds of the team. You obviously want to make sure that Seir goes in front of the enemy. So with there being 300 speed, something to keep in mind. Additionally, the amount of buffs that occur are also very important. And then if you're not going to use Sulfurion or Ashnar, you need to be very conscious of the fact that burns are going to start ripping into you. So maybe a shield set to kind of get you through that first course of buffing phase for you to pop will also help out too as well. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can help out just a teeny bit. The more you lose out on these particular things, though, to enable Seir for the pop, the more you have to be very conscious of how powerful you make her. So less buffs, less debuffs, and less turn meter means that her build becomes more demanding. So higher speeds, higher crit damage values, all that is very important. Obviously, with her, if you can and you have the opportunity to, you're only trying to hit one time. So obviously, Crushing Rend is really, really good to establish a decent hit whenever you're using your Karma Burn. And I guess I could show you also her Masteries too as well. It's pretty much leaning towards enabling that. Set bonuses to enable variable sets like this for every little bit that I'm getting. In terms of each set bonus piece, I'm getting an extra bit of it with the Lower Steel. And then, of course, we're trying to also enable with using Flawless Execution, which is what her A3 scales off of. So that's pretty much the long and short of it. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid team. It was really cool to watch it just kind of, basically, Uros just tanked the boss like a boss. And, yeah, we get through the finish line. So this champion can be acquired through Doom Tower. I'm going to do one more run with you guys just so you can see it. But for the most part, man, it's a very cleverly designed team. There are alternative options. I do believe there was like Aox and I believe Geomancer is also some alternative options you could use if you don't have UROST. It's inevitable that you'll eventually be able to get him if you progress through Doom Tower pretty well on the hard side. But nevertheless, I think it's a cool rendition to use a champion that would otherwise be relegated towards, I think it's like Scarab as your only option to fight with. It kind of makes it a little bit more like he gets another little time to shine, which is kind of cool to see. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think. Is there any alternative options? I actually have a team on my account, which I'll be showcasing here in just a moment, to give you guys a more speed efficient one. It is not without its flaws, obviously. I think there's some caveats and some things that you can do to really kind of isolate and avoid anything outside of 3%, which can happen. But this team right here is pretty robust. It's more of like one of those things where it's a spank and tank. You get through the finish line as time goes by. And yeah, the finish line kind of goes. And you'll see it. I mean, like, even with Weekend, he's not taking enough excess damage here to really push him under that threshold too much to a point where he falls off. And then, of course, when he does get the shield, it just works out. Now, I do want to say this, too, as well. We turn off his kit altogether. So in your preset, you're going to want to make sure that when you set up this team, make sure that he doesn't have any other active abilities on. You don't want that. You want him to just A1. Just let him A1. Fast animations. He goes there. He gets the shield to help him survive a little bit more. But that's it. That's it. For your buffer to enable Seir, obviously you want to use that buff ability. For Ghostborne or Lydia, if you decide to use Lydia, you can get decreased defense a weekend. Be aware of 3%ing. And then, of course, obviously Seir, you just want her to Karma Burn. There's plenty of alternative options that you can kind of use. I think there were some teams I saw that used like a Latrion as an option. I thought that was pretty cool too. But I thought this one was a pretty stable one for the most part, where as long as you got the pop and you got the tankiness for Uros locked in, those two components enable you to get a victory for this. And a reasonable time frame, I want to say, for the most part. I think 2 minutes to 2 minutes and a half, depending on RNG, could also play a part here. This is a great example right here. We got the Brimstone proc, but there's no abilities that were active. That can kind of cause a little bit of a conundrum there. And it's a little bit of RNG sometimes because like he pops it and his turn meter may be at a weird point where he doesn't get his A1 until literally this point, so it may skew it off a little bit. You could probably adjust his speeds if you want to, but the main thing you want to make sure you always retain is that tankiness. The tanky build with the Gold Elixir is mandatory to make sure this guy makes it to the finish line. So just be aware of that if you ever decide to go and adjust the build accordingly. Now, with that being said, please let me know what you guys think about this team. If you guys have any alternative options, please feel free to share it. And maybe I may come around to showcasing something similar for you guys. I don't know. I want to just give you guys information to help you out. I don't think I'm the only one that's going to be broadcasting this information. So it's not so much that I made this, I created this, I'm the one there. It's not that. It's more so I just want to help the community out and give you some options. So shout out to the big brains that did create this. You know, it's kind of cool. Kind of cool to see. Anyways, with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And as always remember, stay ascended.
Creep together, you